Up next in the broadcast, in a bid to restore public confidence and to speed up her reform drive, President Park announces a mini reshuffle of her cabinet. It's been 1 year since the UN Commission of Inquiry released its explosive report on North Korea's human rights violations, and we take a closer look at the building international momentum to create change. And the Lunar New Year holiday exodus begins as Koreans head to their hometowns for quality time with family and friends. Over 33 million people are expected to be in transit over the next 5 days. Primetime News begins now.
Hello and welcome to the program. Live from Seoul, I'm Lee Ji-eun.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
We begin over at the nation's top office. President Park Geun-hye announced a small cabinet reshuffle, which she hopes will restore public confidence and help carry out her reform plans.
And speaking of which, also officially sworn in earlier in the day was the new prime minister. For more on the shakeup, here's our Chae Yu-sun.
President Park has tapped third-term ruling party lawmaker Yoo Gi-jun to fill the seat of Oceans Minister, which has been vacant since former Minister Lee Ju-young stepped down late last year. Yoo is close to the president and practiced maritime law in the past. A surprise pick Tuesday was the president's new unification minister. In a likely move to select a figure who's been involved in her policy-making process, she chose her current Unification Secretary Hong Yong-pyo to head the Unification Ministry. President Park also named another ruling party lawmaker considered a member of her faction, Yoo Il-ho, as Transport Minister. That's two more pro-Park lawmakers named to the cabinet, making up a third of the body and signaling that the president is seeking better coordination with the ruling party. The opposition side criticized Tuesday's shakeup for falling short of public expectations because most of the appointments are from her camp. For Financial Services Commission chairman, the president tapped Im Jong-yong, a former vice finance minister who also headed a private financial group. With his experience in both the public and private sectors, Im is likely to push for a bold deregulation policy. President Park, meanwhile, accepted her chief of staff's offer to step down in the aftermath of a scandal surrounding documents leaked from her office. Kim Gi-chun's successor, however, will not be announced until after the Lunar New Year holiday. President Park is thought to be giving more consideration to revamping her administration as she needs support to carry out her economic reform drive entering her third year in office. Chae Yu-sun, Arirang News.
A year ago today, the United Nations released its first report on North Korea's human rights abuses. The report hasn't changed life for the hundreds of thousands of people still suffering under the repressive regime, but it has heaped pressure on Pyongyang. Our Hwang Sang-hee tells us more.
The UN's Commission of Inquiry launched its first-ever investigation into North Korea's dire human rights situation in the summer of 2013. The three-member panel met with North Korean defectors and experts in Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington to hear testimonies and collect data.
Forced abortions, trafficking, and other indignities imposed upon women, both as prisoners.
The outcome was a landmark 370-page report published last February that outlined North Korea's human rights abuses, including torture, execution and arbitrary imprisonment, deliberate starvation, and rape. It recommended that the regime be referred to the International Criminal Court for possible prosecution of leader Kim Jong-un. Pyongyang's initial reaction was anger, even threatening a nuclear war.
It is necessary to strongly react to the hostile forces attempting to meddle in the internal affairs of other countries under the signboard of human rights.
Then North Korea countered with a different tactic, publishing its own lengthy report on its human rights conditions and releasing American detainees. But all this was to no avail. The UN General Assembly approved a resolution on North Korean human rights, and the UN Security Council held its first-ever discussion on the issue in December. while any referral to the ICC would almost certainly be vetoed by permanent UN Security Council members China and Russia, Seoul is set to open a UN Human Rights Office next month. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
A group of Korean-American doctors are planning to visit North Korea in May for an annual medical exchange. According to the U.S. DPRK Medical Science Exchange, the regime invited 25 medics last month to share their latest medical findings at a medical science forum. Pyongyang reportedly wants to learn advanced medical treatment methods such as cancer care through this event. However, some are uncertain whether the group will be able to make the trip this year, as the regime has been restricting foreigners due to Ebola quarantine measures since last October. The Korean government says it would sternly deal with any Japanese territorial claim to Korea's Dokdo Island. The move comes as Japan announced its plans to send a senior official to a Takashima Day event this Sunday. Takashima is Japan's name for Dokdo. And this would not be a first for Tokyo. For the past 2 years, a senior government official attended this event. Seoul's foreign ministry reiterated that Dokdo Island is rightfully Korean territory backed by history, geography, and international law.
Millions of people here in Korea are heading out to their hometowns to spend some quality time with family and friends for this year's Lunar New Year holiday. The holiday runs from Wednesday to Friday this year, with the actual Lunar New Year's Day falling on Thursday. And then we have the weekend, so practically it's a 5-day-long holiday. We're still seeing some traffic congestion on the major expressways. According to the Korea Expressway Corporation, it's taking about 6 hours to drive from Seoul to the southern port city of Busan. To get to the central city of Daejeon, it will take about 4 hours from Seoul, as opposed to the usual 2.5 hours. Transport authorities say over 33 million people are expected to move around the country during this year's holiday season, compared to 27 million last year. And when this holiday comes around, most Koreans send gifts to family and friends in advance to show their gratitude, meaning it's crunch time for delivery workers as they try to get all the holiday presents to the right places in time. Our Shin Se-min has the story.
'Tis the season. The postal service in Korea gets flooded with packages filled with items like fresh fruit, meat, health products, and other popular seasonal gifts. They will be shipped to cities and towns across the country ahead of Lunar New Year's Day. Piles of packages. Over 500,000 parcels are being checked in and out of this distribution center every day, at least during this time of the year. The amount? Nearly double the usual, forcing the Postal Service to expand its manpower by 10% for the holiday rush. While there is definitely gratitude owed to the senders of these items, the back-breaking work of local postal and delivery service people should not be forgotten.
네, 안녕하세요. 택배 기사인데요. 네, 알겠습니다. 지금 올라갈게요. 택배요.
Lee Chung-hee has been delivering some 300 boxes a day, trying to keep up with the rush of packages. His days have gotten longer and his nights of rest much shorter.
정말 싫죠.
I don't really look forward to the holidays. I used to like them, but being in this profession has changed my perspective. Now, I personally hand-deliver gifts to my relatives.
Despite the drawbacks, Lee still gives 110% to his work.
It's a little nerve-wracking. I have to be careful that I don't lose or mishandle any of the packages, especially because I know they're gift boxes.
And thanks to Lee and others like him in the delivery service, hundreds of thousands of people across the country will be able to share and enjoy an even happier holiday this year. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
It was a widely expected move from the Bank of Korea. The central bank stood pat on its key interest rate of 2% for this month. But with scores of countries around the world loosening their monetary policies, expectations are mounting for a rate cut in the first half of this year. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
The Bank of Korea kept its key interest rate steady at 2% for the fourth straight month on Tuesday. The top central banker said that more time is needed to determine whether the economy is on a solid recovery path, while expressing concerns over the snowballing household debt problem.
We've decided to hold the key rate to see how the downside risks and upward potential develop. We've also factored in the fast-growing household debt issue into our decision.
But market expectations are growing for a rate cut in the first half of this year. They're being driven by the still weak economic sentiment at home despite aggressive government stimulus measures, along with a wave of global monetary easing that countries like China, India, Japan, and Australia are engaged in.
Korea is heavily reliant on exports, and when other countries ease their monetary policies, it erodes the price competitiveness of local exporters. In that case, the Bank of Korea would want to take action.
While Korea's low inflation rate also leaves room for more monetary easing, the central bank governor said that the current 2% key rate at a record-matching low was not holding back economic growth. Following the monthly monetary policy meeting last month, he said the key rate is sufficient to support growth. Now, all eyes are on the central bank's new growth forecast set to be released in April, as a downward revision points to a need for further monetary easing to boost the ailing domestic economy. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Korea's southern port city of Busan has blossomed into one of the country's best culture and tourism hubs over the years, but some in the metropolis feel the city may have lost some of its spark. Ji Myung-gil sat down with a local legislator to hear about efforts to keep the city competitive.
Busan, probably known for its annual film festival and the G-Star Global Game Exhibition, is striving to become a global city. What more does it need to do, and what other investments need to be made in order to make it a competitive global city?
I believe Busan can gain competitiveness on the global stage by expanding the convention industry and revitalizing the economy of the western part of Busan, which is lagging behind in development compared to the eastern part of the city.
Busan wants to build a new airport and is currently bidding for the 2028 Summer Olympics, which is all part of the future vision for the city. All of these projects will require a significant investment. What do you think about the values of all the projects in relation to the size of the investment?
Focusing on external development is important with the Olympics, as you mentioned. But I believe working toward internal stability is also important. Busan is facing problems such as elderly poverty and increasing suicide rates, both of which are far above the national average. There need to be policies that can help boost quality of life for the citizens of Busan.
In fact, all these problems could apply to other cities in Korea too. How do we move away from metropolitan development and toward balanced regional development?
Busan is barely keeping its title as Korea's second largest metropolis after Seoul. Cities like Busan need to encourage balanced regional development to ensure national competitiveness. National policies should be oriented towards helping people who live in provincial cities to establish a firm footing in their hometowns.
As a member of the Parliamentary Committee for Education, Culture, Sports and Tourism, what are you hoping to achieve this year?
In order to keep Busan from slipping into decline, I think we need to make education the top priority. Many of Busan's young students are leaving to go to universities in Seoul because they feel a gap in educational opportunities. I think my duty is to narrow the gap with the capital region.
Thank you, lawmaker, for speaking with us today.
고맙습니다.
Turning now to Europe, there are serious concerns over Greece's $270 billion bailout package after high-stakes negotiations between Athens and its European creditors collapsed into disarray.
With more, we go over to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, both sides remain deadlocked as they try to reach a last-minute deal. Where do we stand now?
Well, Greece is sticking to its guns. It says it no longer wants to be burdened by crippling austerity measures. And Greece's Eurozone creditors aren't budging either. The so-called Eurogroup says Athens must accept an extension on the current deal or could go bankrupt at the end of this month. Our Song Ji-sun has more.
Talks between Greece and Eurozone finance ministers over Athens' debt crisis broke down on Monday after Greece rejected a proposal for a 6-month extension of its international bailout package, calling it unacceptable. Eurozone ministers handed Greece an ultimatum on Monday to request an extension to its debt bailout program with the conditions unchanged.
Within that program, a lot of changes are possible. There is flexibility. But the main features of the program, keeping the budget on track, reforming the economy, have to be maintained. But the first step would be an extension, and then the second step is let's talk about the content of the program, but not the other way around.
The Eurogroup added the talks will not resume unless Athens submits an extension request by Friday. Greece is seeking to overhaul the terms of the $270 billion bailout package that comes attached with strong austerity measures.
And let's find common ground between the two. This is what we've been saying from the beginning. It's not a bluff, because it's the only option we have. It's plan A, there is no plan B.
Greece reaffirmed that it intends to stay within the Eurozone and that it's optimistic the two sides can reach an agreement before the package expires. The program ends on the last day of February, and if it does, Greece's coffers will likely run dry. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Egypt has launched a second wave of airstrikes on Islamic State targets in Libya. This after Cairo vowed revenge for the horrific mass murder of 21 Egyptian Christians at the hands of the militant group. The country's leader has called for a UN-backed military intervention to destroy IS and other terrorist groups that he says represents an international security threat. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Anger erupted in Egypt one day after the Islamic State militant group released a gruesome video showing the beheading of 21 Egyptian Christians. That rage rained down on IS-controlled areas in Libya, where the decapitations are believed to have taken place. Egyptian state television aired footage of fighter jets departing a hangar. The words "Long live Egypt" can be seen written on a jet's tail as it sets off on its mission. This was followed by night vision aerial footage showing airstrikes destroying reported IS camps, training sites, and weapons storage areas.
Of course, what happened is a barbaric and savage terrorist act that goes back to the Stone Age. I can't imagine who would do that. Egypt has every right to defend itself, and it must take steps against this type of terrorism carried out by those fundamentalists.
While the bombings were taking place, some of the victims' families held a funeral service for their loved ones in El Or village of Samalut, though their bodies presumably remain in Libya. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah Sisi is calling on the international community to expand its fight against the IS group beyond its strongholds in Iraq and Syria to include Libya. He says the situation in Libya is a clear threat to world peace and security. The UN Security Council and Secretary General Park Geun-hye condemned the mass murder as heinous and cowardly. Pope Francis, in his Monday address, urged Catholics to remember their brothers who died for the mere fact of confessing Christ. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus to Indonesia, Jakarta has announced it will postpone the transfer of 5 prisoners to a location where the country carries out executions. The group, which includes 2 Australian nationals, is sentenced to death for smuggling illegal drugs. They're due to face a firing squad at a maximum security prison in Java. However, the exact date remains unclear. Indonesia's Attorney General said Tuesday that the delay was prompted by medical concerns as well as requests from the families to spend more time with the prisoners. The delay also comes amid an international outcry for clemency. Earlier, Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon launched separate appeals to spare the men's lives. Indonesian President Joko Widodo, however, rejected those requests. He said it was his country's right to use capital punishment against those convicted of serious drug offenses. And finally, the widely anticipated adaptation of the best-selling novel 50 Shades of Grey has taken the box office by storm as it continues to stir up controversy. Director Sam Taylor Johnson's steamy romance flick has so far taken in $240 million in ticket sales worldwide, breaking several box office records along the way. The movie's glorification of abusive relationship has raised concerns by critics and activist groups. In second place was release of Kingsman: The Secret Service, which took in nearly $36 million this past weekend across the U.S. and Canada. And for a more family-friendly alternative, the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water ranked third, bringing in $31 million. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here next week.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Che with the Sports Brief. Korea Football Association President Chung Mong-gyu has announced his intention to run for a seat on FIFA's main decision-making executive committee. The KFA said Tuesday that Chung had registered for candidacy for one of the 3 remaining spots allotted to the Asian Football Confederation. He and several Asian football executives will run for the positions to be filled during the AFC Congress on April 30th. Now, the 53-year-old has a lot of credibility, most recently having watched over South Korea's gold medal at the 2014 Asian Games and with extensive experience in domestic and regional football bodies. Moving on to the AFC Champions League playoffs, FC Seoul took on Hanoi TNT for a spot in Asia's top club tournament. And FC Seoul dominated early on, keeping the Hanoi keeper on his heels and scoring 4 by the half. They netted 3 more in the second half, winning 7-0 to advance to the group stage. And over to the KBL, we go to Tuesday's lone matchup over in Changwon. The LG Sakers took on Anyang KGC, and while KGC was first out the gate, the Sakers took over from the second quarter. The Sakers were clicking offensively as 6 players hit double figures in scoring in the win. And over to pro volleyball, first to the ladies in Hwasong. The IBK Altos took home court against the Hyundai ENC Hill State, and it went to the deciding 5th set. There, the Altos took control and handed the Hill State the rare back-to-back loss. And to the men in Cheonan, the Hyundai Capital Skywalkers shut down the KEPCO Big Storm in 4 sets. It's a big win for the Skywalkers, who had lost to KEPCO in their last 4 meetings this season. And finally, Lance Armstrong lost the lawsuit and must pay a record-breaking penalty of $10 million to SCA Promotions. A Texas arbitration panel ruled against the disgraced cyclist after it determined he lied under oath during a hearing in 2006, saying he had never doped. Back then, Armstrong sued SCA, which suspected him of foul play and withheld the bonuses for his now-stripped Tour de France wins and was awarded $7.5 million due to unconvincing evidence. But after he admitted to doping in January of 2013, the SCA pushed to reopen the case and got the favorable ruling this time around. And that wraps it up for sports. Stay tuned for the weather up next. Good night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather forecast. At the moment, most regions are under cloudy skies tonight, but up to 5 centimeters of snow is expected to fall over parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces, and less than 5 millimeters of light rain may accompany the snow. And traffic on the road should reach its peak tomorrow morning, but dropping temperatures overnight could lead to icy road conditions, so please take care behind the wheel if you are traveling somewhere tomorrow. Looking ahead, mild conditions should stick around throughout the holiday, but do keep in mind that another bout of showers is forecast for the weekend. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul and Daegu hit 6, meanwhile Busan reaches 9. On the other hand, Jeju reaches up to 8, Dokdo hits 4, Mount Kumgang -4. Wish you a wonderful Lunar New Year's, and here's a look at the international weather.
right, that's primetime news for this Tuesday night. And for those of you getting behind the wheels tonight or tomorrow to head out to your hometowns, please drive safely. This has been Lee Ji-eun.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great holiday. We'll see you soon.